Hello, welcome everyone to Quisitive Unite. Today's session is on Board Intelligent Planning Revolution. A few reminders, make sure to ask questions. This event's for you. Get all your questions into the chat panel. This session will also be recorded, so you'll have access to it after the fact to be able to refer back to the content, as well as dig into some of the particular topics that you might have further questions on, and obviously feel free to reach out afterwards. And please note, very important, there will be prizes. So we're giving away some great prizes and announcing winners at the end of the day. And to increase your chances of winning, make sure you submit a survey after the post session survey comes out. It'll either be three $100 Amazon gift cards, an espresso virtuo coffee machine, or 12-month wine of the month subscription. All exciting and great prizes. So I'm your host, Tom Ironstone, Director of Management Solutions at Quisitive. I've been with the organization for over 12 years. We've also been a board partner for well over a decade. My background is in finance accounting, budgeting, planning, and forecasting, financial consolidation, as well as FP&A, end-to-end supply chain planning, S&OP, as well as retail and merchandise planning. We're going to take you through the Board Intelligent Planning platform today. The goal of the platform really is at a holistic level to drive smarter planning decisions, better outcomes, and lead transformation across the organization. A very exciting part of Board's partnership with Quisitive is that we've worked together to build integration with the D365 platform. So there's connectivity between the two platforms to bring leading FP&A functionality to the Dynamics suite, as well as with the Board platform as well. It's ERP agnostic, so we're able to also tap into other ERP platforms. The platform as a whole, as we know that in today's world, there's lots of uncertainty in terms of unpredictability of events that can happen, which can impact organization. A lot of volatility day to day, whether it's at a macro or microeconomic level. Lots of complexity in terms of how we run our businesses today, whether it's on the supply chain side of things, virtual workforces. Increasing competition, which also impacts our organizations as well in terms of new players that are on the market, disruptions in the market. And with all of these factors and forces that are impacting businesses, it's really forcing organizations to plan smarter. So we have to understand what drives our business so we can plan, run different scenarios, be able to think through business decisions. And ultimately, we want to lead those decisions to driving specific outcomes. So be able to plan a very detailed model that can connect our plans to a particular objective, can help us plan, align the organization. And then ultimately, we're doing all of this to lead transformation across the company in terms of streamlining processes, driving collaboration, and better performance overall. A few quick case studies of Quisitive's work with the Board platform and our customer base. One is Blue Waters. So with Blue Waters, this particular company, they've been leveraging Board for financial planning, reporting, costing, and scenario analysis with Board. With Board itself, they needed to use this platform at Blue Waters to be able to replace Excel, which before they had very manual, silo-driven processes. And really the idea of leveraging the Board platform was to develop a very intelligent planning model that provided end-to-end planning all the way from sales through to production, all of the cost center planning. And ultimately that drove significant time changes, increasing forecast frequency, scenario planning, and all sorts of analytics and reporting. Another interesting use case was Ottawa Sports Entertainment Group. This organization, they run multiple sports teams. They have rental and retail locations. And with this whole organization, they have to think through, and they also run multiple events as well in terms of concerts and things of that nature. And this is a very interesting organization that would say have multiple business models in a sense. And with that, there's no out-of-the-box solution that can be able to provide a platform that can work with them. And so working with the Board platform specifically, it's a very modeling-based tool that allowed to focus on OSEG specific challenges in terms of they again had very manual Excel-based processes, third-party applications, and lots of time-consuming processes that they wanted to better streamline. And ultimately, with this solution, we were able to drive through the implementation was integration to the ERP systems, the third-party systems, and delivering ultimately financial end-to-end planning, operational planning, sales planning, cost center planning, and be able to run different scenarios across all the different business lines, all of the different events, the games, and understanding what the impact would be on the business. So with this platform, they're able to really take the organization into the future, be able to have a very integrated planning approach. As we know today, the Board platform has been a leader in the CPM space, the corporate performance management space, with over 2,000 customers, and 92% of the users recommend the platform. And really a key driver here is that it's been able to drive 75% reduction in planning time. Ultimately, with the platform as well, is to drive us planning, be able to harness data to be able to make actionable insights, leading transformation across the organization in terms of getting folks involved in the planning process. No longer is this just a finance process or an accounting process. This is truly an organizational practice that we're able to pull all the key contributors together from a planning standpoint. And then be able to drive a unification across those organizations, providing timely insights, timely planning, and timely forecasting. The Board architecture is it's a cloud-based application, sits in Microsoft Azure. So with Azure provides all sorts of security from a data standpoint and also authentication standpoint as well. So while it sits in the cloud, it's able to connect to other cloud and on-premise platforms, whether that's your ERP, your CRM, legacy systems that might be on-premise. You might also have other third-party applications or cloud applications, and maybe even flat files. So Board can tap into all of that, ingest it into the platform, applies a very structured data model over top, which then you can leverage it for all sorts of capabilities. And then you can deliver it on the front end to the users of the platform, whether that's through the web, leveraging the Microsoft Office add-in, that's Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. It can be on your mobile device or even embedded into portals. So why Board? Really, the platform itself is designed to be truly agile. So we talked about disruptions in the world, all sorts of uncertainty. So with the platform, we're able to do all sorts of dynamic what-if scenario planning, prepare different types of models, and understand what the impact will be on your business based on key drivers. And with that, it drives explainable predictions. So you leveraging those drivers, you can use Board's Beam engine, which is the Board Enterprise Analytics Modeling Engine, which can drive various statistical models. And you can also leverage Board from an Azure AI and ML standpoint as well, which we'll talk about briefly. With the Board platform is you can tap into all the data sources, as I mentioned, that you might have to use to run the organization. And once it's in Board, you'll have a single real-time version of the truth that's living in the Board application in a structured data model. From a platform standpoint on the front end, Board can be used across the business. Obviously, a traditional function of the Board platform would be finance and accounting. It's sitting in the department as far as doing traditional FP&A activities in terms of planning, budgeting, and forecasting. However, because Board's also an end-to-end planning modeling tool, it can also be used in a very extraordinary way from a supply chain planning process, linking everything from the sales end through to production and procurement and material requirements through to distribution. It can also be leveraged on the retail planning side in terms of all of your sales planning, merchandise planning, anything that you might require at the store level or through web and e-commerce. It can also be used from human resources in terms of workforce planning, also strategic planning from a workforce perspective in terms of long-range goals to be able to think of hiring needs that can impact your organization, talent pools that might be required. and also from a sales planning process as well, where you might be preparing sales plans in terms of what the territory expectations are in terms of growth, what the quota assignment might be across your sales teams. From a user interface perspective, Board's very stunning in the sense that you can have all sorts of toolkits available to you with various visual content. It's all low code, no code, drag and drop to be able to prepare your different modules and applications within the Board platform. It also has lots of collaboration tools that you can leverage within the platform. Obviously, it's web-based. Multiple users can log into the application, view same reports, work on the budgets and forecasts together. But there's also lots of chat capabilities within the tool where you can interact and communicate with users across the organization. It also has artificial intelligence and machine learning and analytics capabilities. I mentioned the Beam Board enterprise analytics modeling capabilities, but also integration to Azure AI and ML. With Board, there's all sorts of modeling capabilities from a process standpoint, so you're not stuck into a very rigid workflow or business process. With Board, you can model out all of your end-to-end capabilities and what your workflow process is within that are unique to your organization. And of course, from a integration perspective, we talked about different data sources. So Board can tap into legacy systems that might be on premise. It can tap into all your cloud-based data sources, your ERP platforms, your CRM, various different business applications. It can tap into your data lake if you might have a data warehouse, various APIs to connect to other third-party cloud applications, and any external providers that might have particular data feeds that you might want to encompass into your planning and reporting and analytics processes. Now, from across the organization, from a user experience standpoint, really the tool is designed to be self-service, so folks can go into the platform as opposed to having the old way where you might be preparing Excel-based reporting, PowerPoint or Word, which is all great, but those processes might be very manual and time-consuming to prepare, and then requiring someone on finance or IT to prepare these reports or data sets that they need to send out to people. So no longer they have to do that when they're using the Board application. The users of the application, they can log in with their own unique persona, where they can view the different reports that they need, the different budgeting or forecasting templates that they need to interact with that provide a lot of value. There's also, as I mentioned, the Microsoft Office add-in. So as I mentioned, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, those don't have to go away. So you can continue to leverage, in addition to the web interface of Board, you can leverage the Microsoft Office suite and Modern Workplace to be able to leverage those tools and functionality that they also provide to the organization, whether that's leveraging it for data collection or preparing different workbooks or presentation packages. You can embed Board objects that are actually linked back to the Board database to be able to have an integrated approach and save a lot of time that goes into preparing those packages. I mentioned collaboration, and one of the interesting things as well is you can set up alerting and notifications. So you can set different business logic. If a particular threshold is surpassed, maybe an alert goes out to someone. You can set up subscriptions. So if someone wants to subscribe to a particular report on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis, you can set up those subscriptions, whether that's on a push or pull basis, and also workflow. So if it's an approval process or if you're on month-end close as well, for example, as those thresholds or those steps are completed, an alert could potentially go out to someone to notify that the next step in the process. All sorts of analytics capabilities, as I mentioned, in terms of automated forecasting, predictions, clustering, leveraging Azure AI and ML. And from a process automation standpoint, you can develop all sorts of different business logic, calculations, end-to-end driver-based modeling within the Board platform, and it's all leveraging low code, no code type calculations that doesn't require an IT background or even a data scientist background to be able to leverage this platform. It's designed for business users, for finance users across the organization. With the Board application from an artificial intelligence, machine learning standpoint, As I mentioned, Board has its own built-in embedded predictive analytics engine called Beam. You can also leverage third-party connectivity through Azure AI and ML, which, of course, you can leverage Quisitive resources. We are a big player in this space, so we can help you through that journey as well. And if you want to leverage R or Python, there's some extensions that you can leverage from that standpoint. If you want if you have those in-house capabilities, or again, if you want to work with Quisitive to help you on that journey. All right, so all that being said, I'm going to jump into the presentation from a demo standpoint. I'm going to be taking you through a few different views of the world. An interesting thing with Board is that if we think about the platform, really there's the whole concept of personas. So regardless of where you are in the organization or your contribution to the planning process, you can have different views of the world. Whether you're an executive, you might have specific reports, dashboards, things that you might want to see, which could be very different from, say, someone on the FP&A team, which they might be involved in the planning process, the strategic planning process, preparing specific report packages and analysis. They might also be on the financial close side of things. So if you're on the accounting side and you go through all of the financial close in terms of preparing month-end reporting, you can ingest data from various systems, go through all of the close process and making sure that all the accounts are mapped, that the trial balance is balanced. If there's intercompany eliminations that need to happen from a consolidation standpoint, the platform can hold that. So you can have different views for those folks that are involved in that process. Or if you're on the sales planning side of things, so if you're running your sales teams and you have different folks involved, you can set all sorts of things like territory quotas, territory planning, incentive comp and design, sales analytics. Or maybe you're on the HR payroll side of things where you might be thinking very strategic long-term in terms of requirements from a long-term planning standpoint to help support the business from different skill sets and headcount in various positions in different regions. Board also has those capabilities. So the key thing, what I want you to take home today, one is obviously an appreciation for your current processes. I'm sure many of you might be in a very manual, spreadsheet-based planning and reporting world where it's very time-consuming. I hate to say it, in many ways it could be very error-prone. Obviously, working in Excel spreadsheets can create all sorts of challenges in terms of making sure that things are linked. Someone might overwrite a formula, maybe a new row is added and it's not encompassed in that formula as well, which can cause concerns. There's also lots of manual effort in terms of manually extracting data, mapping it to reports in Excel, and then preparing presentation packages. And with all of this, it's not very self-serve. So with your audience, they might just want to log in, be able to refresh reports on their own, be able to drill in. If you're working in that type of world that I just previously mentioned, it doesn't really serve up that type of environment. And also things get quickly out of date. So if you need to be able to refresh those packages, it becomes a very manual, arduous process to be able to do that. Also, when we think of the Board application, it's truly innovative in the sense that it cannot be easily compared to any other platform on the market. So if you're looking at a pure budgeting or planning or forecasting tool on the market, one thing to note is that they're just essentially glorified spreadsheets in the cloud. And with that, they likely have data limitations, performance challenges, and also a key thing to take home is that you're likely force fit into the data structures of those other planning tools, which require you to likely concatenate parts of your business model, your chart of accounts, so things like accounts and departments, you need to concatenate them together in a cumbersome way. And they also might require a lot of workarounds, and it's quite painful. And with Board, everything is configurable end to end. So as I showed you from the front end, the user persona standpoint, so how you log in, the reports you see, the navigation, all of that is entirely configurable from an end user perspective. But also on top of that, it's the dimensionality structures. You can have multiple business models in your data model. If you have multiple legal entities that operate in different business models, you can model that all out in Board. All sorts of different templates, calculations. You can do top-down, bottom-up planning. prepare a very unique workflow, plan on any time horizon. So from a long-term, long-range planning perspective, you can plan for many years out into the future, and you can even go down from years into, and that can be calendar years or fiscal years, into quarters, into months, and even planning into weeks, and even planning into days. Other applications really struggle to go down to the daily level to be able to do planning. Board does not. It's designed for big data. It can ingest that big data, so you can do all the planning down to that level. And also, as you can see, very rich visual content from a look and feel standpoint, where you can configure the user navigation. So I'm going to start from the executive leadership level. So obviously we do all the planning, reporting, FP&A exercises to be able to deliver reporting analytics to the executive team. And the executive team might have different views of the world from a high level perspective. They might have specific executive summaries, annual reports, quarterly reports, specific dashboards, whether that's around growth, sales performance, profitability. And then they might even want cross-sectional views of the world in terms of how we're performing from a sales and revenue standpoint, in terms of booking, pipeline, key customers, churn, particular insights that they might want from an operational level in terms of productivity, headcount, innovation, and even just standard financials. Be able to look at income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, and they can be served that all up in a single view, as opposed to going to multiple locations to be able to retrieve those reports, or even having to deliver it to them in a manual static fashion. So things like an executive briefing book or an executive summary, you can automate that all within the board platform. You can also set up subscriptions on top of that. So whether it's push or pull, so an individual can set up a subscription for a particular report, set up the format that they want to receive it in, the frequency at which they receive it, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, a specific day of the year, and also include a text in that email. So what ends up happening is they receive that report package in the format that's desired, on the frequency that's desired, and that can be pushed out to the individual. So if you're on the finance team and if it's a month-end report package that you want to send out, you can broadcast it, push it out to people. Or there might be reports that people might subscribe to on their own that they're interested in, like a sales report that they might want on a daily or weekly standpoint. So you can prepare all sorts of different views and have that push and pull type functionality where it might push out a report in a particular format with also a link to draw them into the platform. Now, from a visual content perspective, you can pull in data from all sorts of different data sources, whether it's your financial system, your ERP, understanding revenue growth, profitability, different revenue trends, operational performance, how we're performing against budget, also from a capital expenditure standpoint, a project standpoint, how many projects are underway, what's the total capital spend, also understanding things like headcount as well. What's the total planned FTEs? How many folks have we hired? Are there any gaps or vacancies? And then keeping track of things like commentary that might get lost in normal presentation packages. So whether you're preparing MBRs, monthly business reviews, quarterly business reviews, annual reports, things of that nature, where there's all sorts of great commentary that it's going into it, but typically gets lost on a time basis, in the sense that those packages, potentially in an organization today, people are preparing all this great content from a verbiage standpoint and commentary, but as they roll forward to the next period, to be able to go back and find it, it's just living in an Excel or PowerPoint or Word document. So on Board, it's actually stored in the database, so you can toggle back to a prior period, whether that's on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis, where they can go see what the results were at that time frame, as well as what the commentary was at that point in time as well. All sorts of other stunning visuals, tracking budgets against your actuals, your strat plan, your forecast, preparing commentary, even preparing standard financials as well. So whether it's income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, You can prepare these reports in a traditional report writer standpoint. When you think of it, you don't have to do manual account mapping into groupings. If you have range-based logic built in your chart of accounts, even if it's fragmented, you can do that in Board, where you can set up those different ranges to make sure that they're mapping consistently to those lines, and knowing that if new accounts are being added, they won't be dropped. And also you can drill down on any visualization or report. So if you want to see what's going into that line item, you can drill in and see what's composing that specific line item. And also encompassing the reporting, and as in addition to graphicals and financials, you can pull that all together into one view, as opposed to having to go to multiple different systems to see a financial report along with visuals. Along with that, you can do it all within the Board platform using the same toolkit. You can also prepare very stunning graphics. So if you want to prepare different dashboards where you're looking at different time periods, whether it's the current month, year to date, last 12 months, and these are just examples to make the user experience a lot easier for executives or senior leaderships that are using these tools. You don't want them to have to go through a whole list of filters. You can put all those on the screen. Different comparatives, whether you're comparing actuals against prior year, actuals against budget, forecast against the original budget, and even filtering into different areas that you might have interest in and obviously all sorts of drill down capabilities. And from a security standpoint, you can lock this down to make sure that if an individual is responsible for a different business area, legal entity, department, when they log into these reports or dashboards or the budgets, they're going to be logged down to their specific cross-section of the world. And another very interesting thing as well, which I'll show you quickly, is that you can continue to leverage Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. So if you have existing packages that you're using today, so say you have a Word document that you've already prepared, and you can actually just start embedding Board objects into this. So this is leveraging the Board Office add-in. So these are Board objects, so they're embedded, referencing back to Board, and this is essentially Word, what you're looking at here. And so I can type anything into here, as well as I can embed data points directly into the text, where it might be referencing the specific month selection, a specific measure or value like sales or operating expenditures, and comparison against budget, and even formulas to say what's been the growth or what's the variance. And you can have that embedded right into your text. So if you have repeatable commentary, you don't no longer have to type it out month over month. You can do that automatically, build it out into your presentation packages. So that'll save a lot of time and also reduce error as well. And again, all these are Board objects. So all you do is have to use the Board add-in to refresh those report packages, even save as another month, so that you don't have to manually prepare these all the time. This provides a lot of value to the organization, and also saves a lot of time, and as I mentioned, reduce risk from a reporting standpoint. And again, that feature exists in Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. So moving on, we looked at the executive view of the world, where we have our report packages, our high-level views, cross-sectional views. Now I'm going to put my FP&A hat on. So a lot of work goes into preparing the budgets, the plans, the forecasts, as well as the reporting and analysis that goes along with that. So in Board, it can truly be used end-to-end from a planning process. You can prepare your strategic plans in Board if you desire to. So these are your high-level, long-term, long-range plans where you're thinking strategic objectives. What are our goals? What are our growth goals, profitability goals over the next 5 to 10 plus years? You can prepare that out within Board, and then that can then feed into the budgeting and planning process, which can be cascaded down, leveraged as a target to know that based on the long-range plan, these are our revenue goals, maybe by the different business units. And then when folks are going into the planning process, they'll have those guardrails to understand, okay, this is the plan. This is what we need to prepare a budget to be able to achieve. And then obviously that cascades into the ongoing forecasting and rolling forecast process. And then we're able to provide all sorts of workflow in terms of approvals. So if if you're going through a very detailed approval process, you can prepare that out in Board, do all sorts of scenario modeling, what if analysis, and then ultimately prepare all the reporting that you might need on top of that. So just to very quickly show you here on the strategic planning side, just to show you that the capabilities exist. You can prepare your plans in terms of from a long range planning standpoint, whether it's macro indicators, high level drivers that you might need in terms of inflation, payroll changes, tax rate, expected margin, capital assets investment, loan requirements, things like that that you might want to influence in the long range plan and be able to start planning out the P&L or the balance sheet and cash flow, but across from a long-term standpoint to see what that looks like in terms of the baseline of your business, to say that this is our business today, assuming no acquisitions, things of that nature, no new innovation or product development. If we're running from a baseline, this is what we expect as an organization year over year. And then from that, you start thinking of, okay, where are we going to drive growth from? And this is where you start thinking of things like strategic goals, where you might prepare different plans to say, in this long range plan, there's things that we might want to consider in terms of launching new products or services, going into new markets, new regions, thinking of adjacencies within our organization in terms of this is the core of what we do, but maybe we can branch out into other areas. And you start thinking of all these different strategic planning notions where we start thinking, where can the growth come from? And then from those objectives that you start preparing, you can start assigning to those objectives. So say it's a new product launch, what the financial impact of that is. So what the theory is in terms of what the impact is going to be from a top line revenue standpoint, what's going to be the additional investment from a payroll standpoint, additional SG&A, and maybe other pieces in terms of required capital, loans, and obviously factoring interest rates on the loans. And you can all sorts of initiatives you can start planning out. And then ultimately that rolls into the overall plan where we start seeing this is the baseline and here's the expected revenue, gross margin, EBITDA, net profit, return on investment, and then the breakdown of all those various initiatives that we might be considering. And then we can layer those into different scenarios to say, this is the original baseline. These are the likely things that we're going to take on. These are some things we may consider, and then maybe this is a worst case scenario, and these are might be the only two things that we're able to undertake. And then that enables us to start thinking from a strategic standpoint. We've gone through that whole process. This is the whatever the baseline is and what the impact is from those different components on a revenue standpoint and a profitability bottom line standpoint. And it helps making better business decisions at the end of the day. Now, flowing from that process, obviously strategic planning processes happen different in various organizations. Then we start getting into the budgeting and planning process. So with that, we can start thinking of, if we start thinking of a P&L, you might have a revenue sales plan, the direct costs related to it, headcount planning, all of the operating cost center related expenditures, CapEx, capital expenditures, capital projects you might be undertaking, and then of course feeding that into balance sheet and cash flow. And there might also be other overhead allocations that you might have as well. And with Board, again, when we look at all of this, you're not force fit into the structure. Everything can be modeled out different ways. And when you're looking at these templates, you're not force fit into this. It's just examples. We're talking about art of the possible. So when we go into an implementation with you, we go through ideation sessions, whiteboarding sessions to be able to understand your business process, leverage our best practices and templates, what we see out in the field, what are the industry best practices that we can help you start modeling out your applications that best mirror your organizations and your overall organizational objectives. So with this here, I'll take you through an example of a revenue planning process. And this one is intended to be a very top-down driven and bottom-up, so you can sort of see how that works. So with Board, it's very dynamic in the sense when you make an adjustment top-down, it'll flush down to the details and it keeps everything aligned. And you can actually, when you update the bottom, it automatically gets rolled up. So with Board, It's a very multidimensional data engine where other tools struggle with this that are very spreadsheet driven, which you're linking a sheet to a sheet. That's not how Board works. It's working as a data model. So as you're updating data from a hierarchy standpoint, say if it's at a country level, for example, that might get allocated out to say from countries to states and then down to cities. And then if you're making updates at the city level, it will then roll up all the way back up to the country level. And this is just an example. Same concept applies from products to product categories or customers to channels. And so here, if we're looking at, say, the different regions that we're operating it in, we might have comparatives where we're looking at prior year actuals, the latest estimates, what the last year budget is, and those could be used as a basis for starting to prepare the budget. And then we can actually start getting into now preparing the details. So these, the cells that are all in yellow, these are editable. The ones that are grayed out cannot be edited. You can also have multiple versions of your budget. So if you have, whether it's budgets are going through various versions and draft scenarios, you're unlimited in terms of the number you can prepare in Board, and also as many forecasts that you want to generate in Board as well. So when you start your budget, you can go zero-based. So you can go in with a blank template, and you can force the people to start preparing those plans, thinking through from the bottom up without having anything pre-populated. Or you can seed the budget with whether it's last full year of actuals, adding in growth, say growth of 10%. You can leverage the predictive analytics engine. So if you have some historical data, say from a volume standpoint, and you want to leverage the predictive analytics engine in Board to be able to precede the model in terms of volume, you can leverage all of that to be a starting point. And then once you go into Board, you can start updating specific values. So let's just say in the North American region, we're expecting to go up to from 11 million up to 20 million. I can key that in. It saves it. It flushes it down from North America down to the product customer level, down to all the cities and locations. And I can also leverage different things such as percentage growth. So I might say, okay, we're expecting 40% growth instead of keying in a value. I can key in 40% growth, and it back calculates that for me. You can play whether that's with volumes, dollar sales, prices, different rate tables. You can leverage that same concept everywhere. You can also lock down specific cells. So say I'm happy with these particular cells for these particular regions, but I just want to update the overall budget. I might say that 150 is too high, but I'm really locked in for those specific areas. I can now come in at the bottom here, so I can do a top-down adjustment and say I want to change this instead of 150. That's way too high. I think 130 is more reasonable. So I can save that. And what you'll see is, just keep your eye focused on here, the 130 is going to allocate it proportionally. It's going to keep these locked in. So it's going to take this, subtract out that, and allocate the remainder to the other cells that are not locked. So you'll see that those remained unchanged, and it allocated out the remainder to get to that 130. So lots of capabilities that you can use here. And then you'll see here we have our strategic plan from a guardrail standpoint. We have what our current budget is and different stats in terms of what the variance is, what the growth is, and different trends and analysis in terms of different product lines, different channels. And then however you want your workflow to look like in the Board platform going end to end from a top down, bottom up, or if you want to set a very simple grid, you can do all of that in here. Everything's fully configurable. And so say if we're going, in this case, we go from a top-down plan, and now we're going to start refining it at a more granular level. Now we're looking at those specific markets. We're looking at maybe our different product categories, what the volume is in those areas, what the average price is. You can start playing with assumptions. So if I want to say the average price in this particular region, we expect it's going to go up to 15. It breaks it back, keeps volume constant, updates sales across the board. I can still do top-down changes. So I might say overall for this particular region, I might say 67 is too high. We want to keep volume constant. What's going to be the resulting price if I bring this down to, say, 55 million? you'll see it broke it back here and then recalculated the prices here. So you can get tremendously sophisticated how you build out these models. And again, I'm showing art of the possible. You don't have to be at this level at day one. You can do a crawl, walk, run approach where you start with the current process that you have today. We'll provide some best practices, how you can better leverage the functionality in Board, and then we'll help you on that journey to start rethinking your budgeting and planning process to not just make it automated. We're not just replicating Excel in the cloud. What we're going to ultimately help you do is start thinking of the future, leverage Board's intelligent planning capabilities to help drive more value and more analysis for your organization to ultimately make better business decisions. And I mentioned a few times, there's the predictive analytics engine in Board. So you can leverage it to run different forecast models to understand it'll run through a competition. It'll look at the different models, essentially ingesting all of the historical data that you put into the Board platform. You can see what it looks like on a go-forward basis. So you can look at it at an aggregate level. You can also focus in on maybe specific channels. Some of you might want to say, how are we performing just strictly for e-commerce? You can see what that trend looks like for e-commerce. And you might even look at things layering on, say, the impact of doing promotions. So if you have a particular historical promotion schedule where it'll look at what the sales were when promotions happened, and if you're planning similar promotions for similar products or channels, you can layer that in to say this was the forecast without layering in promotions. This is our promotion schedule, and this is the impact of promotions on the forecast. And so you can see this is the expected forecast, and then this is the impact of layering on promotions. And then you can take those analytics and you can actually have it feed into your model. So we looked at the sales plan or the revenue plan, and you can say, I really think for this specific product line, we know that we can leverage the predictive analytics engine to be able to update the forward-looking plan or forecast, as opposed to just saying, let's take last year's plan or last year's actuals plus 10%. You can leverage the predictive analytics engine to prepare it for that specific piece. And that's really unique with Board in the sense that you can take that analytics capability, the predictive analytics capability, note to say, I'm applying it everywhere because it might be meaningless. You can use it as a tool to help start preparing your plan to pre-populate particular areas, and then you can actually start editing as you go. So as you saw when I took you through the previous areas, if you're looking at maybe a particular product line or channel, I can use the predictive analytics engine. It'll take that data, pre-populate my plan, and then I can start editing at that point. Or we can just use it as a comparative in your reports to say, this is what we prepared, this is what the analytics engine's saying, and then maybe adjust as you go. So there's all sorts of capabilities. And then, of course, beyond just sales planning, there's all sorts of headcount planning capabilities in terms of layering in all of your assumptions from a workforce standpoint, all the different payroll taxes by regions, healthcare plans, life insurance plans, merit increases, things of that nature, and then getting through from that, being able to plan out based on their location, their position, tenure, whatever it might be, do all the detailed headcount planning, which will then ultimately calculate out the detailed budget plan by the different departments, go through different workflow for approvals. So all sorts of workforce planning capabilities. This is just scratching the surface. And then you have, from an OpEx standpoint, you can prepare all of your detailed plans, all of your departmental expenditures, whether it's marketing, SG&A, maintenance costs, R&D costs, where again, similar concepts if you want to pre-seed the budget to be able to take last year's actuals or specific recurring expenses you might want to pre-populate. And then ultimately that will feed down into the departmental plans, where you might say, for my specific department that I have access to, that I've been locked down, I might have specific areas that I can edit, maybe specific areas that are coming from other modules like workforce planning. And then you can leverage all sorts of things like spread methods, seasonality to start preparing those plans. And then ultimately that all folds together that you want to be able to drive different reporting, what if analysis. So what's very neat here is that you can do scenario modeling. So you take all those detailed bottom-up plans where you might want to say, I have different scenarios or versions, and you can go down to the detail level to update plans, or you can do a very high-level change to say, this is a really best case scenario if we're going to be landing all of the growth, landing in the new markets that we expected, what's going to be the impact. And then ultimately we can drive various reports and analysis and dashboards from that as well. So as you've seen here today, all sorts of great functionality that's in the board platform. If you have any further questions, please feel to reach out. Phone number, email address, website. Please note that down. It's in all of our collateral and material as well. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you for your time today. Enjoy the rest of the sessions. Again, don't forget to complete the session survey. All surveys will get you another submission into the draw. As you saw, there's lots of great prizes. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been my pleasure, and enjoy the rest of the sessions. Thank you very much.